Hello and welcome to Dave Hill's podcasting incident with me, Dave Hill, the pride of Cleveland and beyond. I once got complimented on my sweater at a Tim Hortons in Mississauga, for example. Anyway, I'm very excited to be sitting here with my sweet, sweet dog, Lucy. Maybe you'll hear her breathe shortly. You can hear the heater in the background, maybe. Anyway, we're here for another incredible episode of this incredible and yes, futuristic podcast. I'd like to begin very quickly by thanking a few folks who are kind enough to support the Patreon for this podcast, help keep gas in the tank, and hopefully keep building this podcast and other incredible podcast-based products my partner in crime, Chris Gersbeck, are hoping to do. I swear to you, this is not going straight up our nose, as rumored in the Scandinavian press. Go to patreon.com/Dave Hill, and there's all sorts of incredible things. Patches, shirts, and I'll call you and sing Billy Joel songs. The list goes on and on. I'll even fly to your house anywhere else in the world. That one's expensive, let's be honest. But I'd like to thank, speaking of Canada, Mr. Nick Flanagan. Thank you for supporting us, Nick. You're a handsome man. I'd also like to thank Gratane NYC, which I believe is not their legal name, but Gratane NYC. Thank you. Gratane NYC also qualifies for membership into my street gang, the Dangerous Snakes Who Hate Bullshit, and as such will now be awarded your Dangerous Snakes Who Hate Bullshit bullshit gang member name, Gratane NYC. Your name is Gratane the Pain and Frequent Line Cutter, even after being told to stop a bunch of times. I'd also like, and I think I might have thanked this person already on the last episode. I should probably keep better records of this sort of thing to avoid such confusion. But I want to thank Molly McDonald, and I think I gave you a gang member name, but you're getting a bonus name because of my bad record keeping. Molly McDonald, the Charlotte Double Dipper. Chris, if you could put some echo on after I say dipper, I think that would add some impact. I'm of course talking to my partner in crime and the brains behind this slick operation, Mr. Chris Gersbeck. Anyway, if you would like a gang member name and all sorts of other incredible perks, please support our Patreon at patreon.com/Dave Hill, or just go to Patreon, patreon.com, and search Dave Hill and help however you can. And if you don't, that's okay too. We're going to keep on rolling down this podcast highway with the windows open and Foghat playing really loud. If you can't support financially, please support in the form of rating and reviewing and subscribing to this podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your incredible podcasts. Before we get into the meat of this episode, some of you may have been listening to my radio show, The Goddamn Dave Hill Show, on WFMU this past 5 years, and you may have also already heard, but in case you haven't, I'm taking a little break from doing that show because I have a pressing book deadline and some other life things I need to take care of, and I need the extra hours in my week and the energy to do that. So, but fear not, the show will come back somehow, some way, soon. I've been accused in the Scandinavian press once again of, maybe the show's over. Well, it's not. But it's I've got to take care of some things to the best of my abilities, and I had to clear the decks a little bit. So, but I'll talk about that more in the future. But fear not, my Velvet Monotone will be available in as many forms as possible because I'm too starved for attention to live otherwise. Anyway, let's get into it. Speaking of the Goddamn Dave Hill Show, I ran a version of this interview / conversation, whatever you want to call it, on the radio show. But when I did it, it was with the aim at also including it on the on Dave Hill's podcasting incident that you're listening to now. It is, of course, my delightful conversation with Mr. K.K. Downing, former guitarist for one of the greatest bands of all time, Judas Priest. He has a new book out called Heavy Duty, Days and Nights in Judas Priest, which I read, and it's delightful. If you like heavy metal, if you like Judas Priest, or just excellent books about rock and roll and heavy metal, and I'm a sucker I pretty much read every rock book I can get my hands on. I read a lot of complex stuff too, but I love nothing gets me more worked up than reading about some sweet rock and roll. And so I really loved KK's book, and I was thrilled to talk to him. I talked to him a few weeks ago. He was at his house in England, I believe. Somewhere in the Midlands. I remember he'll say as we're speaking. But and I have to say, usually I have people over to the house. This one was done over the phone, and I will admit to being fully intimidated because I worship Judas Priest and K.K. Downing, and so I'm a little quiet in this one. And K.K. is also a talker, and we're on the phone, which makes it harder to have a so it's a bit more of an interview, and he's really just saying all sorts of amazing things. So I think it's quite enjoyable, but a little less Dave in this conversation, more KK, but that could be a good thing. Sometimes a little, as I've heard from network executives throughout the years, sometimes a little less Dave is a good thing. But anyway, I think this one is a delight. And then we'll be back. I have lots of guests lined up to corral in my apartment here with me and my sweet, sweet doggy Lucy, who's staring at me being like, why is he sitting there talking to himself like this? But in the meantime, here is my delightful conversation with the legendary K.K. Downing.
Hello?
Hello, is this KK?
Yes, is this Dave?
Yeah, Dave. How
you doing, Dave?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, man.
Thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity to say hi to you and obviously and reach out to all of the people and listeners that haven't seen or heard of me for a while.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited to have you on. I'm absolutely loving your book. Congrats on it, by the way.
Thanks very much, Dave.
It's really great. I read so many rock books and metal and music books out there, and it's really one of the best I've ever read. It's I'm really loving it. I'm about halfway through, so I'm excited. I just got it the other day. I'd hoped to finish it before I spoke to you, but now I'll have the added bonus of your insights in my head as I'm right. You're working on point of entry at this point in the story.
Right, got you, yeah.
So, but I'm really loving it, and one thing that struck me is that, well, first of all, I love reading. I was just telling a friend I love reading about. It seems there's a similar story of like so much great music coming from the Midlands in England, and what do you think it is about that part of the country? I mean, and going, and even further north, there's just so much. I mean, there's great music that came out of London, but just something about that the Midlands. Is there anything to it, you think?
It's hard to say, really. The only thing I can say is I think if there's anything relevant, as I kind of do touch on it in my book, I think, is the fact that I think there was a need. There was a need. Obviously, where I came from was very industrial, very much working class, and hence they call it the Black Country because of all the slag heaps and the coal and the foundries and there's a story. Queen Victoria, who reigned in England, for probably about 60 or 70 years. There's a story that she went through the Black Country. I think it was by train or on a coach, and she closed the curtains. She chose not to look at it because she thought it was so depressing, So it was kind of a bit like that. So we had the big blues movement that was starting to come really big, in the 60s in the UK. And lots of great artists took to the style of music, Eric Clapton, John Mayall, and all of the blues and progressive blues groups. But for myself, I grew up, and I was latching on to people like, as I mentioned some names in the book, a couple of songs by the Kinks, the Trogs, the Pretty Things, early Rolling Stones, definitely, very early Hendrix stuff, Purple Haze and stuff like that. And it seemed to me that there was elements of music that wasn't particularly blues orientated, but had this meaningful kind of darkness about it. And I was convinced in my mind that there was an element to music that I was always in search of, that would feed the masses in respect of, kind of do for us young, snotty-nosed white kids, what it was due for the black people in the Mississippi, the Delta, regions and stuff like that, helping them through their daily lives. And it wasn't something that was about. It wasn't there like a tap. You couldn't turn it on. You couldn't reach out and touch it. It wasn't there yet. And I think that's really my inspiration, what I wanted to do, and where I was when I first started in the late 60s. Writing songs, with the original singer Alan Atkins. It wasn't blues. It wasn't about that for me. It was about something that was a bit more kind of punchy and aggressive. Something along those lines. And so it's kind of an interesting thing how me as a kid, and a late developer in respect of music, had this entity in my brain that if we were going to do something, it needed to be kind of researched, really. And I spent most of my early days doing that. But I was in a happy place. I was still quite happy with what we were producing musically. Yeah. And it was very, very befitting for a lot of people in the early 70s when we started to release records. There was people around there like me that got it, not in droves and masses, but slowly and steadily it built, and we gained momentum, and other bands started to hear of us, to see of us, and kind of latch onto really where we were going, So it was good and great times. Very, very privileged to have been around, been born when I was, been around to not just witness, be a part of the evolution of these great genres of music that we know of today.
And what was that like? You talk about in your book, you came, it sounds like your upbringing was very hard, like with your father, especially having, it sounds like he had some mental illness and so you got out of there really young. And what was it like after, things started being successful with the band? Did you keep in touch with your parents at all, or did you ever get their reaction?
No, I kind of, with my mom, yes, with my dad, no. We parted ways a long, long time ago, and that was it. But obviously I still stayed in touch with my mom. Mom was although she was incredibly weak, and in such a very weak situation. She was my comfort blanket, somewhere to run and somebody to run and cry to. But I knew that she wasn't really able to help in the way that I needed to. And so, I mean, probably the best part for me, Dave, of doing a book is really I was kind of interested in telling and sharing my story with other people, because I know there's gazillions of other people that had it just as bad, if not a whole lot worse, as me. But if there's a message in the book, really, especially the early parts of the book, there is, if anybody's out there and you're in a quagmire, you're in a relationship, whether it's parents or whatever type of relationship, it could be working relationship, any relationship, if you're in a quagmire, don't suffer, get the hell out of there. That's what you need to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's mom, because it's not going to get any better. With me, if it doesn't get better in 15 years, it's only going to get worse, is what I think. So
right.
I had to jump ship, and because before you get too contaminated, because you're so influenced as a youngster, it can rub off you, and before you know it, you can be a strange person yourself going through life, and hopefully I'm not that, So what I did, I said, right, I don't care, I'm going to sweep the streets, clean toilets, I don't care, I'm going to get out there, put a roof over my head, look after myself, and mix with normality, and that's what I did.
Yeah.
And of course, I found music, which became not just my salvation, became completely my religion, because we have to understand as well, I keep growing up in that environment, you don't become a religious person.
Right.
Because nobody's introducing you to religion, nobody's showing you religion, nobody's advocating any of the good things that can come from it. So it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So you go out there and you either turn to crime and drugs or whatever else, and that becomes your religion, or you turn to music, or you do, or maybe you can become something really good at something, maybe a designer of something, maybe an architect or something, and that could have become my salvation and my religion. But I didn't know what religion was, and to this day, it's something that I haven't been able to take on board as an individual, and you get a different outlook on life and everything. I mean, to me, everything that was good on the planet, whether it was an individual or a beautiful summer's day, or nice wild animals roaming on the safari, all of that's religious to me. Anything that's good has religious content.
Yeah.
And so people that appreciate good things have potential to be religious, whether they're actually God-fearing or not, So it's something I don't delve into in the book, but I think the main point is when you have it rough as a kid, it's hard. You have to find some alternative to give you guidance and comfort and something that's spiritual. And to me, going to rock festival, music festival, that was great. Meeting absolutely. All of those like-minded people, and it's a massive gathering. It's something that was very, very enjoyable and something we could share together.
Yeah.
And I do believe today that without going on too much about it, but music is the one thing that is, to me, completely religious, because it brings more people together from different walks of life than something that we have in common than anything else. And I can safely say that because I've travelled the world, played all of these different countries, and the one common denominator that we have is music brings us all together in a place, and that we can really enjoy the moment together with as strangers, So
yeah, and what you said something interesting also, like in in yours and the band, Judas Priest, search to, create this music. I think heavy metal more than any, you were saying you wanted to make music that would touch regular, like the working class and all that. And what do you think it is about? Because I do find that it's still to this day with metal, even as big as it's gotten, and Metallica and bands like that, being one of the biggest bands on the planet, it still retains that quality of being.
Yeah, it's a working class product because it came from that, is what I think. But because of what we went through in the 70s and the 80s and essentially, popularizing a very, very important, genre of music, rock and metal, because through success, and acceptance, on the radio waves, MTV, whatever it is. But I've got my own theory anyway, Dave, is the fact that, most of the people now that are kind of, older, middle-aged, or even older like me, we're all fans and remember all of that when we were rock kids and it wasn't that desirable on the planet, the music that we knew and loved, but now we're older people, we, family-orientated, maybe we run businesses, whatever we do, but we take our music with us through life. And for that reason, it seems to have got more popular and even commercialized to an extent, just simply because older people still love it, respect it, adhere to it, and these older people that wear suits and ties to go to work, in the workplace, and I meet these people all of the time. I will do a book signing in Nottingham next week, and I know that there's people going to be coming in with tie and a suit and a shirt. Probably take the tie off. They're going to be coming straight from work, for the book signing and stuff like that. And I know these people, they've taken their music with them through life, and that's the really cool aspect of the whole thing.
Absolutely. And what do you think? Because as I was been reading the book, people credit Black Sabbath with creating heavy metal, but I really think Judas Priest, like you guys, focused it and took it to a place, that no one else did, and like really defined it even visually more so than any other band. What do you think? Having done that, and then you have all the bands that came after you, taking things. You have like after the Nawabam bands, you have like Venom, and then now you have all these. Some years later, then you have like the Norwegian black metal, and how to see like what you guys created, and then see all the many crazy directions it's gone. How does that feel? That must be pretty wild.
Yeah, it's fantastic, really. It's gone to where it has. Just touching on Black Sabbath, I can remember it well. We were doing a lot of gigs as Judas Priest, playing the style of music that we played that was pretty dark, and the stuff that we were doing, and pretty kind of, we were playing songs like Run of the Mill and Never Satisfied and Winter Retreat and stuff like that, and even Victim of Changes, and we were playing, even though it was called something else at the time. But all of these songs were a specific kind of, had a specific kind of flavour, because I was there. Then when I heard Black Sabbath's album, it was no surprise, because there was a few bands around at the time that were kind of doing that kind of Stonehenge, kind of ritualistic, kind of Satan type of music as well. There was one band called Witchfinder, I think.
Witchfinder General.
There's a few bands. Sorry?
Witchfinder General, right?
There was I can't remember. There was a few bands out there that were doing that sort of thing. But when I heard Sab, I thought, great, it's great. This is like refreshing, because it's not the blues scene and progressive blues and all of that, but I wasn't the biggest fan. I liked it, I really liked it, but I wasn't the biggest fan to start with, because I was kind of going down my own road,
Mm-hmm.
I was still had the remnants of the people that I was that inspired me, like early Hendrix and early, and the Cream thing as well, because improvisation was big. I loved improvisation. I thought that's how it used to be, because that's what...
You talk about that a lot. You talk about that a lot with your solos, that you improvise a lot more. I think more so than a lot of other players in metal have.
Because Hendrix was a past master at it, and so was like Eric Clapton in Cream. And to me, that was very influential in the early days. And I thought these guitar gods, I mean, if you when we came on the phone to start with, I said, Dave, great to meet you. Name the two biggest guitar players that you think have ever walked the planet. You would probably say Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton, probably. You might not.
I would say Hendrix. I like... Well, Clapton's a whole other thing. I feel like he dropped off pretty far for my taste, but that's a whole other conversation.
But what he actually did with the Cream was pretty innovative.
He was great. Yeah, he was great with Cream and
what he did with Cream. Because, like I say, when I stopped being a Clapton fan when he split up with Cream, but I'm not going to forget the concerts I saw with what he actually did and what he actually brought to the table. Because it did cause a lot of musicians to transition from blues to progressive blues.
Yeah.
Clapton and Cream were quite responsible for doing stuff like that, for that transition, I think, really, causing things, the next step in the evolution. So those guys, used to improvise a lot, and I always thought, well, that's what great musicians do, jazz, fusion, whatever. So why can't rock musicians improvise? I thought that's kind of how it was meant to be. So I actually did that in a recording studio as well, when I put down Victim Change's Sinner, The Rage, songs like that. I would just go in there and just improvise. And I was proud to be able to do that, because it's a step ahead of the game if you can stand up there in front of thousands of people and just musically improvise what you're doing to entertain people. It's quite something.
It's pretty awesome.
You've got to execute what you're doing in the moment, but you've got to be able to hear also what you're actually going to play next.
Yeah. So I want to ask you one thing. I was surprised, and I think most people probably don't know, or fans of Judas Priest, is that I think most people assume that maybe Rob Halford was responsible for the black leather look and all that, but you came up with that.
Mm-hmm.
And that I mean, I think that's pretty amazing, because in the process you've created the look of metal in general. I mean, that's still. I mean, I was just at the Wacken festival in Germany, and it's just, it's like you basically inspired the fashion of 100,000 people that were in this field. That's pretty amazing. I mean, and then just that's a pretty massive impact, even beyond metal. When you think of in terms of like the origins of that look that you created, and then got the other guys in the band to do, and then it then influences the fashion world. It's pretty. That must be pretty wild to walk around and be like, I came up with that. you know?
Yeah.
Or does that not even occur to you?
It did, yeah, and I've always been aware of that, but I've always been kind of humble and quiet about it, you know, and I was just happy that we were who we were, and everybody was on board with it, because I made a big mistake when I was young and I was a kid, and my sisters were listening to like the Liverpool Sounds, the Beatles, Jay and the Pacemakers, and lots of bands that you've probably never heard of. But they all wore suits. They all wore suits with the same haircut. Mm-hmm. A lot of these bands did that, you know, and so I always had an adversity to bands looking the same, and I think a lot of other guys thought that. So when you had lots of bands that came out of England at the time, Jethro Tull, Free, Taste, Not the Hoop, or whatever it is, Led Zeppelin, whoever it was, they all had a different, they all had their own individualist identity, and kind of, that was kind of the route that we went down, trying to steer away from the pop world. But at some point in the mid-70s, none of this was working for me, and I thought, fuck, we've got Judas Priest. What a great name. It's dark, it's moody. The music that we're doing, you know, is along those lines. We're creating albums like Sad Wings of Destiny, Sin After Sin. We're doing all this stuff. But you know, something's missing. We don't look like we sound. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, we need to be in uniform. Judas Priest we will have, we will be so much more powerful, for want of a better phrase, you know, if we have a uniformity about us, something that's like, not military, but like it's like a street gang almost. It's just a well-oiled machine. And we are connected to each other, you know, and I'm thinking, I can see now we need to have that uniform look, and it needs to be, you know, out, because by the time I was wearing all black and started to add studs, you know, and more leather, I felt totally transformed. I was the person I always wanted to be on that stage, you know. And I'm thinking, if I feel this good, the rest of the guys can feel this good, and if we're all together, we'll all feel that good together as a regiment, as a force. Yeah. And it was kind of unique. It was unique for the time. Yeah, no one had done that. Yeah, so by the time British Steel came around, everything was in place. We had a great album sleeve. We had a great album under our belt. We had all of the look, the leather, because we had kind of, within this concept of dress, I knew that there was lots and lots of different variations that could be had design-wise. And of course, Rob just took the baton and run with it, really, in respect to that. No, wouldn't it be great to have a museum with all of the stage clothes that Judas Priest had ever had?
I would go to that museum.
Just Rob's clothes, for example. In fact, where we grew up, in the place called Walsall in the Black Country, Walsall was known for producing leather goods throughout the centuries, saddles and different things, you know. Mm-hmm. And they have a museum, and they exhibited our stage clothes, some of them, you know, at the Leather Museum, and also at the Town Hall, which is pretty cool.
Oh, wow, that's pretty awesome.
So that's kind of what happened, and, you know, that's kind of how it evolved. But as soon as British Steel came about, metal was consolidated, and the rest is history.
Yeah. And do you have a favorite era of Judas Priest?
Not really, Dave. I think that it's all been my life, you know, and it's all been precious in one way or another, you know, whether it was the 60s, 70s. I have to say the 80s I'd call them the golden years.
You know,
really,
with like MTV, you know, and I feel like
everything was good. There was such a feel-good factor. Lines of girls outside the backstage. I mean, every week, tons of great bands were coming through. It was just heaven sent, really. I would imagine for a music fan to be around in the mid '80s when you've got such, and I think the economy wasn't too bad. It was before all of that Gulf War stuff started to happen in the mid '80s. And there was such a good feel factor. Everything was rocking. Everything was on number 11, and it was all good. So it was something pretty special. Sadly, I don't think we'll ever see those days again. I certainly hope we do.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you before, as a guitar player, I was thinking about it, and I was on your website looking at all your Flying V's, and I thought about it, and I was like, I think KK Downing, you are the Flying V player. Like I can't think of anyone who's more who's defined that guitar more than you. Like, what is it about that guitar that you're so drawn to?
I probably am the most successful Flying V player. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else.
There's other, but you're the guy. I think the one who really.
Yeah, I think because I'm in a band that's been, there's other exclusive players like Michael Schenker, but all around, I think Judas Priest became a bigger outfit with me in it. So people probably do see me as being synonymous with the V and the way it's been promoted. And even now, me not being in the band for 7 or 8 years, the two guys, they're both playing Flying V's. It's become the guitar that's connected to the world of metal, and I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, absolutely. What about now you left Judas Priest, and now how are you spending your time now? I know you're an avid golfer.
I don't really play that much. I mean, I love watching it on the telly, but I'm also a tennis fan, snooker, soccer. I'm I like sports a lot. If I put the television on and there's a darts competition,
Mm-hmm.
I'm cool with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I like competitive sports. I can watch most things, I really can, and get enjoyment from it. But yeah, I've been busy with the book, but I'm flying to Helsinki in a couple of weeks. I'm going to do a big book signing there.
Oh, nice.
I'll probably jam with a few friends of mine I know over there and record some of it and do some stuff. So I like to try and help quite a lot of bands. I'm involved with a rock venue in the Midlands. We just had Skid Row on there a few weeks back. It's called KK's Steel Mill. So trying to get that kind of off the ground and running. I get lots of. I do favours. Friends if they say, "Can you play a solo here or a solo there?" I've done quite a lot of that. I just re-recorded Beyond the Realms because Les Binks asked me to do it. So I do things like that, but it is quite time-consuming. People ask me to form another band with other good musicians, but starting over again, I'm not too sure about that really. So I'm going to shut myself away this winter in my music, my little studio here, and see what comes out of it in spring sometime, Dave.
Nice. And so you're in Shropshire, right?
Yes, I am.
Uh-huh. And where
so,
that's in the Midlands, right? Am I getting that right?
Yeah. So it's just kind of to the left of the Midlands. So basically, I can be in the Black Country. I drive for about 25 minutes, 20 minutes, and then I'm in the Black Country, the start of the Black Country, Wolverhampton, Kidderminster,
Slade,
Stourbridge. The Black Country is a massive area. It's huge because there's there's a million towns in the Black Country. Birmingham is the capital,
Yeah.
but then we have West Bromwich, Walsall, Bloxwich, Dudley, Stourbridge, Kidderminster. The city of Wolverhampton is in the Black Country. So we have Cannock, we have Cheslin-Hay, we have all of these massive suburbs. It's huge, So and it's all very working class. And obviously lots and lots of industry came out there. Obviously we did lots of the early industries from the 1900s, 1800s was to do with building a lot of things for ships, anchors, chain making, nails, shovels, tools, and all that sort of stuff. And then obviously when trains came along, we make, a lot of engines for a lot of things, engine parts, car factories.
Yeah.
Everything and everything really. So, the anchor for the Titanic was made just a spitting distance from where I was born.
Oh, wow.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. And what do you think? Because I was thinking when you were talking about growing up and stuff, and like I come to the UK a few times a year, and I absolutely love it. But there is something that the Midlands, especially with the, and when you were talking about your childhood and some of the dealing with your father and stuff, and I think on top of that, like there is such like a just with the weather there as rainy and gray as it is, adds like an extra heaviness to everything, I think. And do you think that's why so many great metal and hard rock bands have come out of the Midlands? Do you think there's anything to that?
Yeah, I think exactly that. I mean, I think that, I was born just a few years after the war, which was very sinister and morbid and times, in particular, in the area where I grew up, because as you said, the weather's pretty dismal for the most part, and food's scarce, and there was no luxuries, My mum, when I was a little kid, my mum used to get me to do things like, go into a cake shop, for example, that sold cakes and bread.
Yeah.
And she used to, and when I was a little kid, cute little kid, 5 or 6 years old, she got me to ask the ladies if they had any broken cakes that I could have. and it worked. And those ladies, I went, and if they didn't have any broken ones, they would break some up and put them in a bag for me,
Yeah, and there's
stuff like that.
What about? I'm still trying to wrap my head around all the pie and eel shops. Can you stomach any of that stuff?
No, that was more of a London thing.
That's London.
And that's London. That was pretty odd, eels and that, but that stems back again because most parts of the country, especially during the wars, everybody had it tough, food rationing, So, like I say, we were climbing out of the dark ages, in the 50s when I was a kid growing up. It was all about recovery, after. Yeah. You'd walk down the street still and you'd see bomb craters. And when I was a kid in the 50s, there was, if you had street lighting, it would probably be gas, not electric and stuff like that. So it was pretty damn dark and dismal. But that's kind of what makes you as a person, I guess, really. And so when music came into my life, I was looking I was looking for, the textures that would be befitting, of my life really at the time.
Yeah. And what?
Whereas like the posh kids, people that did have money, there was happiness in the home, there was happiness at school, there was happiness everywhere because shit, they had money, as soon as they could, they had a brand new bicycle and stuff like that. I mean, I could never afford a bicycle. I had to go to scrap yards and put a bike together out of scrap pieces, and that's what I did.
And what?
So those were the people that more likely were into, I don't know, the Beach Boys and Elvis and the Beatles and all of the pop stuff,
And then what did it feel like then when Judas Priest is, you became like a massive band, and you're buying Rolls Royces and you're collecting cars. Did you ever stop and think like, oh man, I've come a long way?
Yeah, it was all right. I don't know if I was saying the book, but I had my first car. You can imagine what that was like when I passed my driving test when I was 27 years old.
Yeah, and you talk about how you were riding a bike around before that.
Yeah. I was riding a bike, and there is a picture of me somewhere, and I'm on my bike, and I'm leaning on my Rolls Royce.
Yeah. In the book, I was looking at. I love that. Yeah, that's sort of the.
Is that in the book?
Yeah.
To me,
yeah.
To me, I got so used to riding my bike, and then suddenly, I've got these cars. It was kind of didn't really feel as though, because within the space of 3 or 4 years, I went from my very first car, which was like £50, and it was a bad car, to good cars.
Yeah,
it was weird.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, I think people that don't know, your story and everything, I think they assume that Judas Priest just like appeared out of thin air as this massive arena band. But you guys, when we had released Sad Rings of Destiny, in the very first car I had, I was 27 years old. Sad Rings of Destiny had been released. I used to go into, because I could have gone on forever in the book, I used to go into old deserted houses that were marked up for to be, demolished. Yeah.
Old. And I used to go into the cellars because people used to collect newspapers and stuff like that, and I used to put all the newspapers, old newspapers, in my car until the car was full of old newspapers, and I used to take it to this place that used to buy like a paper mill, and you didn't get much for it. A whole car full might buy you a pack of cigarettes or something, or but that's what I used to do. And Sad Wings and Destiny had been released, and I didn't tell that story in the book, and I haven't, and I don't, but lots of things like that used to happen.
So you were still scraping pretty, the first few albums, like. It was tough. We were all doing whatever we could just to get a few shillings, Yeah. And it feels. It's pretty amazing now. I feel like Judas Priest music and the bands of, sort of the classic British metal bands, it's bigger than ever now. Like the music has lived on and transcended, I feel like every, more so than any other subgenre of metal. It's still the biggest music, bigger than ever. Would you agree?
Yeah, I do. And it's such a bona fide, style of music because there's such a good variety as well.
Yeah.
Dave, is what I think. I mean, there's such a good variety, you know, of different styles, which is good, you know. And it's healthy. You know, you can go from Saxon to AC/DC, Van Halen to Black Sabbath, to the Scorpions, to Metallica, to Venom. You know, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
You know, and to New Boogie or whatever. There's something in there for everyone, really.
What is there any current, you know, like newer bands that you're into now, or do you listen to any of that?
No, and I should, you know, but nothing's come to the surface yet. I'm sure there's stuff out there, but I really do need to take some time to listen to, you know, specifically if there is someone that's following the footsteps of Priest, Maiden, Saxon, and all, you know, then I'd be happy to listen. But as we say, it's probably a pretty hard act to follow, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the newer bands to do something that's comparable, that makes a mark and gets noticed, it must be tough, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've kept you another 15 minutes, so I don't want to keep you too long, but thank you so much for talking to me. It's an honor, and I'm excited to finish up the book tonight, and I'm excited to see what you do next. And thanks.
Yeah, good. I hope you enjoy the rest of it.
Absolutely. As I've said,
luckily, you know, and I'm so glad to have been able to produce it. Really, it's been good. I get to speak to a lot of people around the world again. You know, I've been away for a long time, but just needed to also later on in the book answer some unanswered questions for everyone, really, and give them an insight to what it was all about and how I felt as though I felt kind of somewhat broken towards the end and had to give way. Really,
yeah. I mean, that must have been, you walked away, you know, after like 40 years with the band. That must have been very hard.
Very hard indeed, mate. Very hard. You know, and this whole retirement thing, it was just purely the guys on the other side really saying, oh yeah, KK's retired, looking after his golf course, but that's not the way that it was really. You know, there was a good FU letter that went in, you know, at the end there, and I actually did say the words, you know, you can tell the fans and everyone that that you've broken me, you know. Sad as it seems, but I always thought I was a strong person and I would never, ever be the type of person to give in or to give up. But I do know this now, that everybody in the world has got a breaking point, because if I could reach that point, there's no doubt that everybody, you know, has it in them to give in, you know, if it gets to be that bad. But I say, and I do mention, you know, whatever has happened, whatever is happening now, whatever happens in the future, my full respect where it's deserved, you know, for my fellow bandmates. We shared a career together, we shared a legacy together, you know, we built something very special together, and we lived a life together, and we fought a lot of battles together, and that I only sincerely hope that is reciprocated by the other guys, because we all deserve that credit and that respect, and it certainly comes from me to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope so too, and you know, it's such an amazing legacy on so many levels of what you guys did. So as a huge fan, I hope so too.
Yeah, me too.
And I think I don't know. I think so Glenn's not touring. Glenn Tipton's not touring with the band. Seems like maybe. Well, I hope. I mean, because I just saw the band play at Wacken, and it's weird to see them now without you and Glenn up there, of course. And so I'm hoping.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mean to cause any controversy or any trouble or anything, but it was. I was disgruntled, really. I mean, I said I was shocked and stunned that they didn't ask me to step in when there was a position because if I'd have said no, Dave, I'm not able to do it, or for whatever reason, at least it would have been good for them. They could say, well, we asked KK, because we understand that that the fans have a voice too. The fans are responsible for our success. The fans have been loyal to us for 40 years. The fans also have a voice and an opinion, but they didn't do that, which I think was wrong. I think that was wrong to do that. Yeah. But obviously, if I'd have said yes, I'll step in and resume my position, then I think that I had a right to do that, really, because I wasn't able to continue with Glenn towards the end.
Yeah.
Because, quite simply, I'm that type of musician. I like everything really tight. I like to get off on the music. I like to know that everybody's got my back. If I faux pas, that we're that we're all watching out for each other, and there's no room for any weaknesses up there, because it's a dangerous place to be as well. I mean, we have to keep our eyes open. Accidents can happen, but the music has got to be absolutely. And I have a saying: I said to the guys, the older we get, the younger we've got to play. But it wasn't happening. It was just slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
It's always going to be a great show. People are always going to want to enjoy it because they've travelled and paid the money for the ticket.
Yeah.
And they're listening to the songs and seeing their favourite band. So it's always going to be great. But when you break it down, it's not that great. People, you're obviously a musician. You've told me you play the guitar, right, Dave?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So you can watch a band, but you strip away all of those videos and all of that monitors, and there's not a fat lot happening.
Yeah.
I always maintain that we've got to be able to entertain an audience, no matter how big, just with our amplifiers, our stage clothes, and our performance.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to perform and entertain with nothing. No stage set, no nothing. Strip it all down, because that's what we used to do. It's what made the band into a great band.
Yeah.
We were able to do that with nothing in the early days.
Yeah.
When we came to America and started to support Alice Cooper, Fogerty, Oreo, Kiss, you name it, we had fuck all.
Yeah. Yeah, it's. I remember reading you talked about opening. I think for REO Speedwagon, they gave you just one spotlight.
We had nothing. We had nothing. We had to bring the music and the Priest identity, but also perform. We had to be able to build individually and as a band something that was charismatic, something that was people would be drawn to with our presence on that stage. And it wasn't easy. We had to work at that and become that person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The people these people would enjoy looking at our hands, our feet, our eyes, all parts of our body, playing that instrument Because that's what happened to me when I was a kid. I saw Hendrix play with nothing behind him, just his amps.
Yeah.
I saw great people, Paul Kossoff, Gary Moore, great players, entertain me. Well, I was absolutely, totally transfixed on their person. And that's what we did.
Yeah, absolutely. Before,
and then we integrated all of that with each other. We would play off, and all of that, would become entertaining. And that's pretty special.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would love to go out. I would love to go out and do that again as a band.
Yeah. Do you ever
without all the pomp and circumstance, just put up the Marshall amps, go out there and play hard rock.
Yeah. Do you think there's any chance of that happening? Of you getting out there with some?
It would be good. Judas Priest and become naked.
I would love
naked
it.
Again.
Yes, strip it down.
Strip down to the bone. Judas Priest.
You got to keep the motors. You got to keep the motorcycle on stage, though.
Oh yeah. Well, that was fun. I mean, we used to use props like fire extinguishers, bull whips, motorcycles, anything that we could lay our hands on, because we, didn't have a lot of money to go around for these big screens and spectacular things that you can, create energy with now.
Yeah. Well, pretty.
We'll see, mate. We'll see what 2019.
I hope so.
Brings.
I want to see you out there with that flying V again.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll work at it, buddy. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, KK. This has been awesome. I'm a huge fan, and I hope we see you out there again soon. And in the meantime, we have all those great albums.
Cheers, Dave. It's been fun, mate. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks
Appreciate
a lot.
it.
Have a great
day. Thank you very much.
Yep. Take care.
Take care, mate. You too.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And there you have it, my delightful conversation with KK Downing. Please get KK's book, Heavy Duty, Days and Nights in Judas Priest. I read it from cover to cover in hardcover, and I loved it. As you might have, I tried to get him to talk about the Flying V guitar a little bit. I could have talked about 6 hours on that alone, but maybe you're glad I didn't. But anyway, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week with another incredible episode. And thank you for joining me here. And hopefully tell your friends in my global plot for world podcasting domination and other forms of domination. Please, again, rate and review and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your Stitcher, wherever you get your... Can you hear Lucy breathing? She's really breathing hard there in the background, shoving her nose into the couch. And support us on Patreon so we can get some decent microphones and amp up the mayhem majesty of this podcast. Again, it's not going straight up my nose or even my butt. I know that's a suspicion. It's not. And next week we're gonna do some more calling people and singing Billy Joel songs. So fear not, there's plenty of those coming down the pike. And support the Patreon, did I say that? Yeah, of course I did. I won't shut up about it. It's annoying, Dave, I know. Anyway, I'd also like to thank Chris Gersbeck, who twisting the knobs and making this the slick. Like, if say I want to add like the sound of like a spaceship flying by. Yeah, there you go. Okay, thanks, Chris. Yeah, he added that right there. So, he does all sorts. The bells and whistles, you have Chris to thank. Anyway, and you have Lucy to thank for the interruptions and various dog noises. All right, that's about it. Have a great weekend, and assuming you're listening to this on Friday or the weekend, or have a great day, whatever. Your hair looks great, and I'm excited to know you, and keep on being a bright light in the world. Oh my God, I forgot to talk about my trip to Jamaica. Okay, gosh, I should have gotten into that earlier. It was right next to hedonism, too. I saw a lot of gray pubic hair through the fence. Let's leave it at that, and we'll see you next week. Bye!